Yeah, absolutely. I mean, guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to go with the first question. How did you get this in your heads from the first place? And I know that, from your family and your heritage, you were born up with these ideals, but tell us a little bit about how you were inspired about this, and also about your historical facts, because I'm really eager to get to know if that's true or not. Is it true?
Absolutely. So, I mean, a lot of it started, our parents took us to Greece many times when we were young. Our parents are both lawyers, so, we kind of get some inspiration from that.
And they're back there, by the way.
Yeah,
there were two behind the scenes.
Right. And so they were definitely working behind the scenes. I studied history and classics at Georgetown University, where I did my thesis on Parthenon sculptures. And I was really interested in the debate to begin with, and the family's been very interested. And I think what we thought would really make it great is if we could somehow modernize the basically take what is often just thrown in, discussions between scholars and, people who are interested in the issue. How do we take that and actually make it cinematic so anyone can really get inside the issue and get excited about it? So that was really our goal. And then John and I just kind of started working on the story together. John became very passionate about working in this idea of Athena the goddess, and how, really you have to stand in the first line in order to defend the goddess Athena. And there's that whole devotion element, and also kind of the modern Vicky Gouros in a way, the one who's going to, the modern Greek lawyer who's going to stand in defense of Athena. So between those two ideas, we kind of started to work it out.
Yeah. And we absolutely wanted to present as many possible arguments as possible, both through the actual dialogue that takes place, but also the visual aspect of the film. You'll notice we had the sequence where we wanted to put the Parthenon back together digitally, so that the character says, "You can see the Parthenon the way I see it." Those of you who've been able to visit the Acropolis, you stand up there and you see this magnificent ruin. And the amazing thing is when you recognize that there are so many pieces that are missing, and then it really used to be so much more of a building and more of a program. So we wanted to offer that argument. We also wanted to offer the legal argument, which we think is fascinating. There's such a rich history to be discovered in the actual exchange of documents that between, as we presented in the film, but between the three documents, you can actually show that the names were changed on two of the documents, and this is just fascinating history. Mr. Rudenstein of the Cardozo Law Review wrote a very good article, and he did a lot of the principal research on this topic. But you can actually see for yourself between the two existing documents that we still have that there's the NN on one of the documents, and then there is Reverend Philip Hunt on the other document as the courier, the man who's charged with carrying that document. And he had to do that in order to present a case to Parliament to say that there was some kind of writ permission. So we thought that was a fascinating backdrop to get the story into motion. And then from there, that's just the first half of the film. The second half, we really wanted to get more into the the ideals that we've come to believe in, just studying the Parthenon, just recognizing the history.
Had you planned, or did you know that you were going to do this extraordinary guerrilla filmmaking where you do this handheld stuff with your actors going through the,
If we had more money, we would have done it, like reenacted it.
Staged it.
But the amazing irony of it is the wonderful coincidence is that we had a wonderful unit of filmmakers in Greece who we worked very closely with, who had been in every single one of those demonstrations. They're just ordinary people, students. They're just upset. They're mad about the direction that the country's going in. They're upset about a lot of things. And we work with some extraordinary filmmakers who every day they catalog this activity, everything that's going on in Athens. And we managed to work our actors into that. And we got to give thanks to our lead actress who's here with us, Cassandra.
As an actress that was willing to go.
So it was funny because we didn't have the money to do it, we ended up doing the real thing, and it turned out pretty well.
That was an experience. That was an experience.
So, I mean, to my mind, it raises a lot of questions, and I think this is a movie that is an issue movie. It's going to be discussed quite a lot. Today we have Marie from China 4 online. We have Robert from The Mirror as well. He's one of the video producers, and a lot of other of our guests. But can you do you want to ask anything that it has to do with the issue as an issue? Do you feel that this is something that will be perhaps discussed in the social media? Is it something that people will start talking a lot about? How do you feel about this?
Yeah, I think so. I think there were really three goals when we were making this movie. The first was to, number one, make a compelling film that was cinematic, tells the story. The second was to educate the audience, right? Was to give the information out to the people so people can feel like they really are capable of making a debate one way or the other. And then the third goal was to absolutely raise awareness on this issue and bring as much attention to it as possible. So we think, based on recent Gallup polls, which have shown there's been an overwhelming support for the return of the marbles. It's up to about 80% of the poll.
British people, right?
Yeah, the British people.
Yeah.
So we think between those elements that it's definitely going to have a significant impact on this debate.
And then what we really want to do with social media, and we've gotten some really great allies in this effort, we think that the really interesting issue that comes up in this film is this idea that in ancient Greece, it was a woman who represented the Greek people and who really represented justice in its purest form. And we believe that that actually has significance today with female empowerment, with any range of women's issues, where women around the world are really, if you look at the whole history of the world, it hasn't been very good in the record of the treatment towards women. We believe now that this ancient idea of the way the Athenians saw Athena, their goddess, that idea can actually come of age today again. And we want to share that through social media. That's part of our campaign as we promote this film. And we have some wonderful allies who we've enlisted in that, including Ms. Mariana Vardino-Yanis and others that want to promote that idea that this is really about female empowerment in the classical sense. So that's really what we want to do through social media.
Right. Questions? Anybody? Got any questions?
Why didn't you show more of what we did at the prop house?
Oh,
That's
that's
actually a
Well
wonderfully.
done.
yeah, it was a quick
was all
shoot,
his-
right?
We didn't actually film at the British Museum. They
You're
will
kidding.
But we did have a
You
full.
squashed the Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, we had a full-scale replica of the Rosetta Stone, in addition to a full-scale replica of that Ramses head. That was a real deal. So that was really fun to shoot that.
Everything was real and
Yeah,
brilliant.
yeah.
There's a story, as you may not know, which to me is one of the most emotionally powerful proofs of the value that the Athenians have always set on the Parthenon, and that it's not just a new thing, that is this idea that they never really cared is obviously not untrue, and that is during the Ottoman Turk occupation there was a period of big exchange of gunfire when the Greeks were trying to, around the time of Byron, were trying to get rid of the Turks, and the Turks were in the Parthenon, and they had run out of ammunition, and parts of the columns were held together brilliantly, extraordinary in engineering, which is invisible to the viewer, using lead inside them. And the Turks discovered this and started to take the lead out of them, which of course would cause them to collapse. So the Greeks were so distressed at the possibility of the lead being taken out of their Parthenon that they actually, under a white flag, parleyed with the Turks and gave them ammunition. They gave them ammunition to allow them to fire back at them, rather than force them to destroy that building. Now that bespeaks a relationship with the building that is unique in the world. I can't think of anything that is similar to that in any culture in terms of their relationship with the building and its idea.
Better ambassador than you.
Sorry?
I cannot think of any better ambassador.
He's the Promakhos.
We're right at the front line.
Yeah, we're yeah, go ahead.
You have to excuse me if this sounds really stupid, but you chose to show the British in like a very sort of negative light. You have to excuse my journalistic balance side here, but you've got support within Britain to help you with your cause. So why did you choose not to show that sort of support from inside our country?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting question, and I think the first aspect of it is that we wanted to concentrate directly on the British Museum, and specifically, what that relationship would look like between potentially curator and barrister appointed to represent the curator and the British Museum's interest. So we tried to really target that. I definitely understand what you mean in terms of like the larger population, right? And obviously that bigger context. I think that would be something that, if we wanted to expand it, if we wanted to expand the story more, it would have been a terrific thing to incorporate.
Yes, because Neil McGregor is not a villain.
Yeah, of course.
But I think towards the end, it's in the ICJ that you give him the best argument and the most passionate argument. When Paul Freeman speaks there, it is genuinely, you think, well, that is actually a point. He's actually that wonderful image of the anthology and each chapter being something. Of course, technology, and this is the point I try and make to people who insist that this part of the marble should stay in London, is that can you imagine how brilliant an exhibition it would be to show the journey? Firstly, you take plaster casts of the marbles. That's the easiest thing in the world to do, and that was already done in the college in Edinburgh, where there exists a perfect replica of the marbles. You can go and see in the art college in Edinburgh, and indeed in Elgin's own home, which was kind of a run-down ruin by the mid-19th century. But so they take a plaster cast, so they have a complete replica, so you can go and see them. But also, and by the time it's done, it'd be a fantastic 3D holographic display of how these original marbles were then taken down and transported, how they went across Europe, how they were unshipped and put into the Acropolis Museum before even possibly being put into their original place when the work on the Acropolis and the work on the Parthenon is finally done. And that would be a display that everyone visiting the British Museum would be able to see and involve themselves with, which would there would be just as much education. The idea that it would be less is ridiculous. There'd be more. So it seems to me there's no argument for keeping them in Britain because they would functionally be here anyway. That's what's so mad.
I've got a question. Did Elgin actually pay for the marbles? Because when you think about it, they're obviously in the British Museum and they got there somehow, so they were obviously shipped a long way to get to the British Museum. And I'm just curious, we saw a lot of documentation, but did money actually, change hands? And if so, I only mention this because I was talking to some other British friends before I came down here tonight.
Law, you can't have a contract without consideration.
Well, it is that, but I sat and I just had a very sort of strange conversation with some other British people before I came down here today. I by the way, am passionate that we shouldn't hang on to stuff that actually shouldn't be here. I mean, I often think about what I would think about if I found that there was a piece of Stonehenge in Greece, for instance. I mean, God knows what would happen if we found out that a piece of that was over there. I mean, we'd be in exactly the same position. But the key thing I'm trying to understand is, when I mention this to these people, they say, well, we paid for them. How much would the marbles be now? How many billions would, if you put them on the market, what would they be worth? I know this is a silly argument, but, money does play a part in this, and, what went on? I'm just curious. It didn't come into your film.
Yeah, well, so to answer the first part of the question directly, he did pay handsomely, and it was in the form of material goods that were exchanged as basically as favors, as gifts, because he was the ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, and it actually bankrupted him. That's why he ended up selling the marbles to the Parliament, that then bestowed the marbles upon the British Museum for the safekeeping. The interesting question that has to be asked there in all of that, and I'll make this very brief. I mean, because it's really a very large issue and it's fascinating in scope. But the question to be asked is, if you're dealing with who are you dealing with? The Ottomans? Are we dealing with the ancient Athenians, the modern Athenians, the people of Greece as a whole, the people of Europe? It's just that sense of identity. That's something that actually we believe has been lost over time, and people feel that Greeks today don't necessarily walk around thinking that they're part of a long lineage from the ancient Athenians. So the whole question of who owns the marbles is actually an open question, and it's something that you don't really have to answer. You don't have to say any particular nation or group of people owns the marbles. It's more, where do they belong to promote that original Athenian idea? Otherwise, you're just putting a big piece of black tape across it. If it's the Parthenon today, as we were saying, when you're up there, you see it. You see 1/3 of what's actually going on up there. The original program had so much more to it. So that's really, I think, to sort of bend your question around. I think that's the question to ask.
What I was trying to get at
Yes.
was where they stole it.
Now, I think if you'd like to see, we can run the film again. But I think you'll find that yes, because it's fascinating. If you look at the history, names were changed, bribes were paid, lies were told in parliaments that we point out in the film very briefly. We mentioned that. You can make a very, very strong argument that they're actually illegally possessed artifacts, and that's what we put forward in the film. But in the bigger picture, we really want to make a broader point about why the marbles belong as close as possible to the original building from which they came. Maybe we'll do one more, and then we can. We have a lovely reception set up for everyone. People can mingle.
Just to say, I was the one who had to approach the British Museum about filming in it, and which was an interesting. We thought, why not? We'll try this one on, and went in there and had a couple of meetings, and they were very happy for us to go and film in there until they saw the script. But so my question actually was where are we at the moment? What is the situation? The Greek government's asked for it to be returned on a number of occasions. Where do we stand at the moment?
There's a wonderful effort at UNESCO currently to actually have a motion to actually state that the marbles belong in Greece. That's their proper place. But ultimately, it's going to take a very large public swell to actually put enough pressure on the proper entities to actually get something done. It would be an enormous precedent to send the marbles back to Greece, and that's what makes really to us this film so interesting for us, is that there's such dramatic odds at stake here on both sides. The marbles belong in Greece, but there's such a high activation energy required to actually get something done. So therein lies this beautiful conflict and stress that we found very interesting to explore in our film. So it's going to take a lot of public awareness. That's what we're trying to do with the film, and just get the message out there. People taking personal initiative. We believe this whole idea of female empowerment, and that's something that men and women can get behind. That's the message of the Parthenon. We want to reawaken it, so to speak. And one day, we do believe that one day the marbles will return to Greece, because that's the right place for them to go. Maybe one more?
My only question was, do you think the British Museum's theory is that once they open the doors and give one thing back, they have to give everything?
Of course.
They'll say that. Of course they'll say that.
I think it's one of the central concerns.
No,
But to your point,
It's interesting that under the not so very highly regarded, perhaps, Silvio Berlusconi, the Italian government returned some parts of the Acropolis to Greece, and it was a charming little ceremony, and it was absolutely fine. But the museums of Italy still contain enormous numbers of Greek antiquities, which they have no intention of returning. So a precedent wasn't set in that case. I think in the jargon you have to give the British government, British cultural entities, permission. You have to somehow allow it for them to feel magnanimous, for them to feel that they've done something good that has made them popular, that they will feel good about it, to save face, fa figura. Exactly. And the way not to do it, of course, is to be furious and to rage and to make them defensive. And it's about being smart. We know we're right. That's not an issue. It's now about being smart. It's about the best way to achieve the goal that we all, I guess, in this room, most of us, I hope, share.
Hopefully we've convinced more.
Yeah, I hope so. I do.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I think
very
we'll
much.
wrap it up.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.